see the sun, I'm rising up, I feel the love now. Oh, it's in my vision. Oh, it's gonna take me a little while just to get my head around this.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited about this. I have actually been talking to my audience about this to get some feedback to see what they were interested in. I've gotten some really interesting responses. So I think after we get into kind of what you guys do and some various therapies and things, then I'll start kind of throwing out some things that people were asking about, and we can kind of talk about it.
That sounds great.
Cool.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to tell me a little bit about what you guys do, your names, what you're certified in, the different types of therapies you do, all that stuff.
Awesome.
My name is Rachel Tweed. I am a licensed professional counselor and a licensed massage therapist. I focus mostly on individual therapy, and I'm really big into the mind-body connection. And then one of my focuses other helpers, so mental health providers, teachers, anybody in the educational system, anybody in the medical field. I really believe in working through burnout, secondary trauma, compassion fatigue. So, yeah.
I'll go next. I'm Lakita Roberts. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. I am trained in EMDR, so eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Very long name. Just another type of therapy. A lot of the work that I do right now is dealing with survivors, mainly survivors of sexual assault, any kind of sexual violence. I work with premarital couples right now, and more recently I've been working with more women of color, just dealing with more issues that have been coming up more recently.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And I'm Anna. I'm the owner of Dallas Healing House, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and also a registered yoga teacher. And most of the clients I see are people that have been through trauma. So whether that's abuse in their past when they were children, or recent traumatic events like miscarriage, sexual assault, stuff like that. And I'm also into mind-body connection and stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool.
And I'm also certified in EMDR, which we can talk more about. But
I actually had a lot of questions from people about that. That was like one of the hot topics.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Jessica. I'm also an LPC, and I specialize in working with people with addictions and eating disorders, and trauma and disordered eating and body image stuff. And I do a lot of family of origin work as well. Work with a lot of people who grew up in families with addicts or family members with eating disorders as well. So, yeah.
I feel like we could do a whole video on addiction alone. It's such a hot topic right now. I actually interviewed 25 addicts, recovering addicts, and family members and friends of addicts for an article that I wrote.
Oh, cool.
And it was interesting to see the perspectives across the spectrum, because some of the family members never really understood what like the withdrawal process was really like, or why the addiction cycle continued, or any of those things. So it's really fascinating. That's cool. So obviously, you guys do kind of a mix of things here. You guys do like some yoga, and what else do you guys do in this space besides traditional therapy?
So we have the EMDR, which is just a different modality, and then we also have massage therapy as well. Right now, really focusing on trying to get other helpers in for massage. That's something that I've been trying to do a little bit more of, and just give that piece of self-care for other helpers. So
I was reading something the other day talking about trauma and stress and the way the body holds on to it, and I had never really thought about that. It's so fascinating.
it definitely is. Yeah, it's like amazing to talk to somebody about the reactions that their body has to their traumatic experiences, where it may be held, if that part of their body is associated with a different memory or something like that. So going in with massage can be a really unique way to like access some of that, but doing it in a safe way with somebody who's trained in multiple things and has a different background and understands traumatic responses.
Right.
Yeah, and now with all the new research on trauma, it would really be remiss to be trauma therapists that don't pay attention to the somatic stuff, the physical stuff. I mean, that's just bringing it up in session or doing the yoga piece or EMDR, which is also what I would consider like a mind-body approach.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize how important, well, maybe important's not the right word, no, maybe it is. Physical exercise is just as important to the brain and trauma and all those things, like physical activity and moving the body and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys promote like kind of like a holistic approach then? So maybe you have some traditional therapies, then you're also recommending certain exercise, or what does that look like?
Not so much exercise, I don't think. I mean, even the kind of yoga that I do is very like laying around.
Okay.
Nervous system
Sure.
regulation. I don't know.
Yeah, you focus on like connecting with the body and noticing. I'm speaking for you. Like noticing what comes up sometimes in relation to trauma, and then kind of having control over that, right?
Definitely.
Or at least having peace with it.
Yes, definitely.
And since I work with a lot of people with disordered eating, a lot of times people have like unhealthy relationships with food and exercise. So my approach with that, well, I usually work with a dietitian that would focus on that, which I think is like a holistic. It's just like, you know, that's their lane and this is my lane.
Okay, sure.
But inevitably they converge, and we talk about it as well. So my approach, I'll just put words to it. We work on joyful movement, so it's like the relationship with exercise would be more joyful rather than, you know, punishing or trying to reach a certain goal with your body or changing your body. So it's more about your experience of it, it's more about your relationship with yourself. And then with food, the goal is intuitive eating, and that could be a whole other video as well.
Yes. It's so fascinating. So obviously there's a lot of misconceptions around mental health, and I think luckily social media is doing a good job right now of bringing more awareness, which I think is fantastic. But I think especially in areas like the Bible Belt, I've noticed there's still a lot of, especially for men, you see a lot of like shame around mental health and therapy. My mom is in the military and she's a police officer, and so watching the people she works with in both those fields, I know they don't seek out help, and then especially in the military, a lot of them, they think they're worthless or they don't have a use anymore or whatever, because they're supposed to be this big macho, you know, person, but they're dealing with all of this trauma that they've just experienced. So it's really unfortunate. I have a friend that she's a paramedic and a firefighter, and I know she's going through some therapy right now because there's so much PTSD that people don't think about, but they don't talk about that in those fields really, or it's very hush-hush. And so I guess you guys kind of just maybe clear up some misconceptions, and some people probably think that it's like, you know, you go in there and you lay on a couch and you're staring at the ceiling and they're just staring at you or whatever, like.
Yeah, that's what we do. We don't know. I think that one of the biggest misconceptions that like I've seen, especially historically, I know that we're doing like a better job of changing that now, but is that you have to have some kind of severe mental illness to be in counseling, which is not true at all. So many of our clients are coming in for self-discovery and personal growth and mental health maintenance. So it's not like you have to have some kind of serious disorder to start counseling. Like it's helpful for everyone. Everyone can benefit from therapy, I think.
That's what I always say too. I'm like, I feel like could be preventative also.
Yes,
like just helping you like deal with stress or deal with life easily or better.
And we all have stuff to heal from.
Right.
Everybody.
So,
Another thing that I hear from like doing the initial like phone calls with clients, more recently I've been getting a lot of comments of like, okay, well, you know, I've never done this before, so this is all new to me, and so it's gonna be and like the most recent one I had, she's like, it's gonna be hard for me to open up. And I'm like, well, part of this, it's a relationship too.
Right.
Like, we are not expecting anybody to come in and just like on day one, like, okay, well, give me every single detail, every single thing that's happened.
Right.
But, like, we are people too, and that's probably the biggest part. The biggest part of therapy is the relationship that we have with our clients, and so. A lot of people, I think, come into therapy like, okay, I gotta go and like heal everything immediately. And that's not true. We are building trust. We are building a relationship, and with trust comes more processing and just
Right.
a safer relationship to be able to do that.
I think that's also a good segue. I know from my personal experience, I've been to a few therapists over my life, and there are some that I really resonated with really well, and I felt like we got so far. There were others where it felt like I was banging my head against a wall. I felt like they were frustrated with me, I was frustrated with them, like it didn't feel like it was going anywhere. So do you guys really promote like finding the best therapist for each person, and how do you guys go about that?
Definitely. That's a conversation I love having with clients up front. It's like, this is your time, this is your money, this is your experience. Like, I really want to make sure that this relationship feels like it fits for you, because that's the truth. Like, it starts with the relationship. And so as we walk them through, especially if they've never been in therapy before, like really walking them through, like, this is what this looks like. What are your questions about the process? And then like checking in with them after the intake and like, how did this feel for you? How does this space feel? How does this connection feel for you? And I always love to talk about rescheduling and the idea of like, how do you feel about rescheduling? Like, did this feel like a good fit for you? And then letting them know that throughout the process, if it does get to a point where it does feel like an off fit, letting them know that even if it feels really hard, that's a conversation and it's something to consider, because growth really doesn't happen if you don't feel that connection. And so making sure that that's priority for the client is very important to me, as in all of us.
And for us, like, especially for our clients who've been through trauma and interpersonal violence and stuff like that, like making choices is so important. And so every kind of step of the therapeutic process needs to be like, this is your choice. And I think Rachel does a good job of that during her intake sessions of like, okay, so you have a choice right now. Like, does this feel like a good fit? If not, that's fine. I can give you some resources.
And it sometimes makes people uncomfortable when I say that. They're like, they're like, but I, and I'm like, but it's okay if it doesn't. I'm like, I'm not saying that so that you tell me. I want you to honestly feel like this is a good fit. And if it's not, let's get you someone that feels like a good fit.
That's great.
Yeah.
So do you guys, oh sorry, go ahead.
I think another aspect of therapy that people don't always think about is that if there's something weird or off in the relationship, we are always more than open to talking about it, and a lot of growth can happen there. For example, if one of your problems outside of the therapy room is like feeling like people judge you, and then all of a sudden you feel like your therapist is judging you, like you can work on it right there, and that's really rich work. So it doesn't always mean it's not a good fit. Sometimes it's a good conversation, but I think when you start to talk about it in the beginning, it's like okay to talk about it.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought about that. That makes sense. What other misconceptions do you guys think, or do you guys see or hear, or?
I get asked a lot if we give advice. I think that's a big conversation, really not even just with clients, but with people outside of this world when I'm telling them that I'm a therapist. I always like to emphasize that we don't give advice. I like to emphasize to clients that like, you are the expert in living your life. You're here for 1 hour a week, and so I'm here to support you in that hour, but really you're going to go out and you're going to live your life and you're going to make your choices, and I'm here to support you as you like make that choice, have a reaction, come back, we can talk about it, but there's not like a prescription in therapy for me.
And a lot of our clients can be like, what should we do? And we're all like, I don't know.
And there are moments when we're really honest and we're like, we wish we could give you the answer. Like, we want that for you too, but it's not what this process is about, and that can be frustrating for people.
So maybe for someone that's totally unfamiliar with therapy, then what is that process then? What should they expect? What does it look like?
That's a good question.
Because I do think people probably think they would come in and be like, what do I do? So maybe they wouldn't know, okay, what's going to happen then?
I see it as a space to work through your issues and kind of untangle and get a fresh perspective on what you're going through, and not a place where we're going to give you the answer.
Right.
We don't know the answer.
I can help you find your own answer. Or be okay with not knowing an answer. Sometimes it's just it's an unfortunate part of life that you don't always get the answers.
Do you think you guys are helping with tools and resources so that they can better navigate? Is that part of it more so?
Definitely.
Okay.
Especially during the first part of therapy, I see like we do work on tools more. And I think Jessica's right. It's kind of like a lot of it is helping them get in touch with their own intuition and needs and their inner guidance, rather than like us being like, yeah, you should dump them.
Right? That's so interesting. So I'm such a big like synchronicity person, and today that's what my Instagram post was about, was how I'm trying to channel more of my like intuitive side and kind of realign with my own like energy, because I realized lately that it was kind of off. And I'm sure some people are like, what is she talking about? Like, we're all saying. But I also think that we have so many, for me, I see a lot of like technology and how fast we move nowadays really impacting part of that intuition, but I'm also seeing it impact relationships and dating and communication. Are you guys kind of seeing something similar as well?
I think for a lot of my clients, it shows up in how they're coping. It's more of a distraction. It becomes, I can just get on Instagram and like scroll for a while and not have to engage with the issues that I have in my life.
Feel the feels.
I take the feels. Like, oh, okay, let me keep doing that. I think that's how I've seen it show up for a lot of my clients lately. Yeah.
So then do you help provide tools or help them figure out, okay, what's a smarter way to process through this?
Yeah, or like the boundaries they might need to set with social media if it's causing more harm than good.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of moments where they may be helpful. You know, when we start talking about coping skills, we talk about like the purpose. And for some people, having a distraction in one moment may be the thing that you need. But at other times, it may be, okay, we need to actually sit down and deal with this. And so like you were saying, like, you know, talking about like boundaries. Okay, I need to set boundaries around this, but there are also moments where, you know, I have to actually like, sit down and really do the work.
Cool. Okay. My next question, I'm making sure I don't do this incorrectly. I can't say the whole word, but EMDR, right?
Yes.
So I've seen a ton of questions come in about that. People wanting to know, what is it good for? Will it help this? There was someone that was asking if it would help their child's dyslexia. There was someone asking about trauma. I mean, so kind of tell us, like, what is it helpful for?
The dyslexia part, not very well versed in it. Not sure if it can or if it can't.
Okay.
But I can speak to the other parts and chime in. It's been basically because for my population, a lot of people dealing with trauma is really, really helpful. For trauma, it's helpful for a lot of things as well. The trauma piece specifically, when we start looking at EMDR and how it is effective, I think a lot of clients come in like with a traumatic event and are a little bit fearful about having to go through all the details, about having to talk about this piece and this piece. EMDR kind of breaks it down in a way we are looking at the cognition. So what are your thoughts? What are the thoughts around that? Talking about body, how does it show up in your body? How are you carrying this trauma around? And then the way that we process. With EMDR, the desensitization part of it, we're working to desensitize some of the triggers. So for some of my clients, that may be like a smell or a location or just whatever that looks like. And in the goal, we are trying to install the positive cognition or a positive thought about the trauma, about the thing, about the issue.
I'm picturing, like, so my mom has PTSD. So when she first came home, any loud noise, she was hitting the ground or reaching for a gun or something. I mean, a pop can or fireworks are really bad still. And so I'm assuming that is helpful in situations like that. Okay.
It actually was initially studied on veterans. So EMDR, all the initial research came from military trauma, and the research was immense, like more than all these other therapies, because EMDR is very systematic. So it's easier to study than some of the other kind of talk therapies where it's a lot more like gray area type of stuff. EMDR is very there's like numbers involved,
quantitative.
Like how distressing does it feel to you right now on a scale of 0 to 10. And so they're able to gather all this research, and it's just been shown to be really efficient and effective, especially over time. So with a lot of other kind of therapies, like trauma-focused CBT, which used to be kind of like the gold standard in trauma therapy. We would see clients leave, but a year later, there's a spike in symptoms again. With EMDR, all the research shows that those symptoms kind of maintain over time.
That's great.
Yeah, so we try to use it with a lot of our clients if they're open to that, and we've seen a lot of success with it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've started my training. I'm in the midst of it, but it's an interesting approach with having that massage lens and then having the therapy lens to kind of have this thing that does address the bodily sensations and the way that the memories are held within the body. So that's been one of my favorite parts, and actually hoping to get more into that whole piece of like the somatic experiencing specifically. Is something that I'm really passionate about moving forward, because it is to talk to somebody about where the things are happening within their body that they may not be able to put words to, but they can talk about sensations and they can talk about the way their body is reacting. It's fascinating to see, like, I may not be able to say the words, or I don't have a clear memory, but I can go back into the way that I feel about this thing, or like what Katie was saying, like smells or sounds or locations. So it's really interesting.
That is interesting.
So yeah, it's actually like just reading about it is fun. I'm like, I love reading about it. To get to know more about it. So
I try to use a lot of my own experience in some of my videos, so if I do, I don't care that I like that I'm sharing it with them. But I know even for me, I had trauma growing up, and so I'm a very like jumpy person, and I would assume like things like that are little triggers when I like stay tense all the time. Like I'm just like a little ball of like. And I have an autoimmune disorder. And now they're starting to show research. I saw the other day that a lot of trauma and the way the body is holding on to that trauma is now leading to autoimmune diseases, which totally blew my mind.
So a lot of autoimmune, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, stuff like that.
Which that brings me to the next question. So I had quite a few people asking about like mental health and dealing with chronic issues. So chronic illness, whether it's cancer, both having it or being a caregiver. So what do you guys kind of like recommend in regards to like different types of therapies or things like that?
I think EMDR would be just as helpful for those issues too. The first thing that comes to mind when I start thinking about just the word chronic support groups come up for me. Having the support, because the individual therapy relationship is important. But I also think about just the sense of community, and just the insight that can be gained from other people who may be dealing with similar issues. I think group was the first thing that came up there. Just,
I thought about the caregivers that usually if they're used to giving care, it's really important for them to get their own care.
Yeah, I have a lot of women that follow me that they have children that were born with all kinds of different diseases or illnesses, whether it's like congenital heart issues or it's, there's one woman that follows me, her baby has, what is it called? It's basically like reverse Alzheimer's. So she's slowly going backwards. And she's watching the people in her community are starting to lose their children from that disease. And so I know there's, a struggle there of she probably needs that, like you were saying, that care as well, because she's 24/7 taking care of her child. So I could see how that would be helpful. When you guys are talk a little bit more about like the yoga and the mind-body connection. Because I'm sure some people are going to picture certain types of yoga. So yeah.
So the kind of yoga that I lead is a trauma-informed yoga. So we focus on going through poses in a way that's compassionate to your body. Again, like the making choices thing. Like, does this feel more comfortable, or do you want to sit like this? Do you want to use this modification or this prop, or does this feel better? And throughout, we're working on nervous system regulation, because when trauma takes place, we're all out of whack. Like you said, it's like you're just constantly jumpy or hypervigilant. And so this kind of nervous system regulation stuff, like trauma-sensitive yoga or massage, can get you to the place where it's like, okay, I'm a little bit more regulated, I'm feeling a little bit more grounded. And it also gives people the tools to ground themselves if they're having like a flashback, like you were talking about, or if they're having an intrusive thought about the memory or anything like that. So.
Is it kind of similar to like a meditative yoga then? Is it more focused on like inward breath work, things like that?
Yes, so kind of focus inward, but also balancing that out with grounding externally as well.
Okay.
Because with a lot of our complex trauma survivors, going inward for too long can be really scary. And so it's kind of like a dance of like, let's try it out, and then maybe notice the sounds that you hear around you, or, kind of doing work like that.
Sure, okay, that's really neat.
Yeah.
What are your, I know you guys can't talk patient specific, but if you guys could talk about like favorite moments you've had that have like reinforced like your love for therapy or something like that.
I had some of this today. I really love the moments where you really connect human to human. This is really hard to put into words, but it just, there's like a gratitude both ways, where the client is saying like, wow, this is worth it, and I'm like, yes it is, you're worth it. Moments like that are really, really cool.
I remember my first breakthrough the first time I went to therapy. He said something to me about, you don't think you're enough. And I was like, I guess I've never thought about that like that. And he's like, have you ever said that to yourself? And I was like, I don't think so. And he's like, okay, I want you to try saying it. And I just started bawling. And I was so surprised that brought that out of me. I was like, oh, how strange. And he's like, I want you to go home every day and look in the mirror, and when you get up, this is what you say to yourself every day, like 5 times. I am enough, I am enough. And so then, like, at the end of our therapy journey, I remember being just like, I'm enough. And like, it felt so good, and he was like, kind of what you're talking about. Like, he was just very excited too. It was cool to feel.
I actually had a moment today as well. I think one of my favorite moments is when a client is sitting across from me and they are telling me how they were able, it's like what you're talking about, it's like they're able to apply something that they've been working on, and it's something that's like affirming for themselves, and they've reached inside and they've realized that they feel strong and they feel empowered, and they are able to identify like, I am on this journey. Because it's wonderful to be like acknowledged as a therapist and as the support system, but it's so powerful when the client's like, I'm doing this thing. Because I'm like, I can see that you can do this thing. Like, that's why I believe in this, and that's why I'm a therapist. I believe in it. But for them to be like, I believe in this because this is how I'm using this in therapy, but also outside of therapy. And I think that I love talking to clients about the balance of in session and out of session, and like how we're applying things and we're learning things and we're having these insights and moments of empowerment. And it's just, it gets me really excited about being there.
I think I'd have to say, this was probably more recently too, when my clients come in with things that feel a bit scary, or the things that may have been like challenging them for a little while. We've probably been dancing around it for a little while in session, but they finally say, hey, like, I'm ready to talk about this. And for me, it's a reaffirming, like, they trust this process and they feel safe enough here in this relationship to be able to talk about the scary things, to talk about the heavy things. And so for me, it's like, okay, I'm doing something right. Yeah.
Oh, I love all those moments.
I know I'm like getting all in the field.
I know.
I like saying stuff, and I'm like,
This is good. I think that when I see my clients like gaining control back over their lives and like gaining some freedom from some of the stuff that they came in and was weighing them down so much, and to be able to be like, I can go a full day and not think of it at all, or when I do think of it, I'm not having the same kind of reaction. That's like super cool, because I'm like, now you can just live your life and like enjoy yourself.
That's really cool. You guys were saying earlier, you mentioned like people can just come in for growth or come in for different things like that. What are some different categories maybe people wouldn't think that they could come to therapy for?
That's a really good question.
First thing that came to mind, was transitions. There's so many transitions in life. There's career transitions, educational, life, like having a baby or loss, grief and loss. All of those things are transitions, and they're hard. They're really hard, and we all go through transitions. That was the first thing.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think people will say like, well, I don't have anxiety, so I can't go to counseling. Like, we all have anxiety about something.
Well, and I think some people don't realize that they have anxiety, is what I've learned recently. Because for a long time, I was like, I don't have anxiety. And I'm like, oh, I do. I sit and I like rub my nails underneath each other. And I like, like, I'm fine. I have anxiety.
And I'm like, how could you live your whole life and not?
I think we can call it different things. I think of kids, like the example of, well, they were just a quiet child. Maybe they were an anxious child, and that's why they were quiet, or they were like a rule breaker, and maybe that was depression, like acting out. Yeah, it can look hidden in so many different ways.
And I think normalizing that, again, we all experience all of the things. And I think when we talk to clients about that, just like having, again, that human connection of like, it's like saying you are not alone, like you are in something that we are all in, and like normalizing the conversation for everybody, because everybody can benefit from having this unbiased person sit there and like be with them and reflect to them. So I'm trying to think of other reasons.
Well,
so many.
you mentioned addiction earlier, and specifically opioids top of mind right now because that's such a prevalent issue. And I think so many, I would say, family members or friends, they don't think about the fact that they probably need to go to therapy for the experience, because that's a traumatizing experience. And then I would think maybe the people that are suffering with the addiction themselves are probably, they're told they just need to go to rehab or whatever, but what happens after rehab or in those other phases? So I could see where that would be beneficial.
Yeah, and even beyond like before it's addiction, it's still a problem, you know? And I think that really often the belief is that it has to be really bad, or it has to look a certain way for it to be alcoholism or for it to be an addiction. But you can come in at any point to like work on it or look at it or change it. I think that we do have control over where our rock bottom is too, and it doesn't have to reach complete bottom before you get help. And that can be true on the other side of rehab, or I think that can happen at any point.
Yeah, I'm even thinking of relationships. Like, I know that we have a lot of counselors that see couples, and couples will wait to come in until they're like real close to splitting up. And we're like, you can come in anytime. If you're a human in relationships, you're having relationship issues.
Well, and I think something that I think about often is you hear people say, well, that's just how I was raised, or that's how our family handles these things, or whatever. And so breaking generational cycles maybe is another good.
Definitely. In fact, I was thinking about, I've had conversations this week around the generational cycle of experiences of trauma, and I think normalizing conversations around parents and family has been a big part of my work, because I'm like, we're here to talk about your family, but we're not here to demonize your family. Our parents are doing what they know and what they've experienced, and so they're bringing that to their parenting, and then you are, growing in that and developing in that. And then if you are starting a family, like a lot of young parents are like, well, what if I go back into that? And I'm like, but here's what's different is you are here, you're already addressing a conversation that generations before maybe didn't know it was happening, couldn't recognize it, they didn't have the resources, the conversation was very different. And so that idea of like tapping into, we're already rewriting the future, we're already looking at parenting in a different way, and that's going to translate to your children. So
well, I think the self-awareness is probably the first important step. It's like, hey, I don't want to repeat these patterns.
For sure. And that initial conversation with someone that's like, I've never been in therapy before, but I know I have family stuff that I need to work on. I'm like, this is a big step. Like, let's validate, let's celebrate that you made this phone call, because it's already changing so much for you. So,
And I would think similarly, I see a lot of girlfriends currently going through like postpartum, and before that was a very hush-hush thing, and now more people are talking about it, which I think is great, but there's still this, a lot of my friends that are stay-at-home moms, for example, they society's telling them that's their job and that's what they're supposed to do, and they shouldn't feel like it's too much, and all these things. And so I think that could even be a space where people could come in and get a little bit of care, because again, they're those caregivers that are constantly.
And that makes me think about burnout, and that's a big part of your work. I think a lot of times I was just having this conversation not too long ago with my clients about work just feels stressful all the time. It wasn't just a bad day. It wasn't just a bad 2 days. Like, this is starting to take over my emotional capacity. Like, the way that I'm relating to people isn't the same. And I think a lot of times it's just building, like, okay, I gotta push through. I gotta get up and I gotta keep doing it. But burnout is a real thing. That's a very real thing that can be worked on and processed through in therapy. I think about another topic that's come up more recently. It's goal setting, and it makes me think about transitions too. Just having a conversation of, like, I don't have goals, or I don't know. I've heard this a lot. Like, I don't know what I want to work on, but I know something needs to change. And this can be a space for that too. Of just, you may not have a very clear direction about where you want to go, what's the next step, but that's something that we can, process in a space that is non-judgmental, in a space that is, this is yours. This is your time to process through the things that are coming up for you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Kind of in that same vein, I think therapy can be a good place to get to know yourself too. If that was all you came in for, you can get a lot of work done that way too.
And everyone could probably use a little more of that.
Well, and just thinking like transitions and like motherhood and postpartum and like having that conversation of like, this is a big life transition. This is like a big thing where it's like, how do you give yourself a space to go and kind of combat that burnout? Because if we're looking at like motherhood and being a working woman and like kind of looking at what this identity of being a woman is, it's like, where do we feel burnt out? And is it caring for another person? Is it, filling all of these roles? And like, how can I address burnout? How can I do it in a preventative kind of way? Like, how can I come in and get to know myself in this new phase of life, and then continue to set those goals and like just give myself that time now, and really work through that stuff as it's coming up. So I think it's really a powerful place to be with somebody as they're learning what a new role looks like in their life. It's like, it's a whole nother thing that's happening for them. So yeah.
Another topic that I'm remembering now that I feel like fits in this conversation is there's a lot of more women than men that, especially my followers that are in kind of the Bible Belt or whatever, they grew up, and even I still live in Salt Lake City, so this is really big in the Mormon community too. Growing up, they were taught if they had sex or whatever, it was bad, and they became used chewing gum, and they became a used car, and no one wants either of those things. And so then when they go to transition into their marriage and they get married, one, they don't want to have sex because their mental situation around it is not healthy, and then they don't understand that that can be something that's like a good thing, not a bad thing, between their partner and them. And so I think you see a lot of like women not realizing that they can kind of take ownership of their sexuality or that experience, and I think that's such an important topic that I've been seeing a lot.
Yeah, that definitely comes up. So much of counseling is working through shame.
Yeah.
Whether it's shame around sex or even, like you said, parenting, like letting people know like you're never going to be the perfect parent. You're doing mistakes.
Yes, it's okay.
It's okay.
And I think like approaching, I in some of the work I've done in the past is just like openly talking about some of those topics like sex, like if that is something that is an uncomfortable conversation to have, just kind of like obviously going with the client's language, like that's a big part of therapy, is using how the client identifies something, but kind of working in that idea of like, okay, well, let's like talk about what that is in your life and like how you've seen that before, and how can we get in there and make this like, if there is nowhere else that feels like a sex positive place, like can this room feel like that for you?
That's right.
Can we open up a conversation around that in a way, because especially as women, based on our upbringing, our expectations of women around sexuality, it's like, let's kind of like break that down, but at your pace and what feels right for you, and then bring in just those little shifts and see how they stick for clients around the topic.
I like that. That's great. And I think there's also in today's climate, there's so much talk around like what being a woman is, and there's some like very cookie cutter molds, I guess. Whereas not everyone fits in that, and so I think there are women that struggle with trying to figure out, okay, so where do I fit? And I could see that being another good, or even I don't want to say this incorrectly. What am I trying to say? People struggling with maybe identification, how they identify, or if they're trying to come out, or you know, something like that.
Yeah, a lot of, and we're doing a better job about it now, but a lot of the roles, a lot of expectations before were very limiting. Like, you do this, this, and this, and that's it. And even just talking about shame, I think that's a lot of times where this comes from, of like, I had this expectation for you, or this is the role that I wanted you to fulfill. And it's okay to not want to do that, but hearing that message all of the time of you need to do this, or this is your role, you should do this to take care of this person, or this is, as a mom, these are the things that you're responsible for. And then if you walk away from that, like, I don't want to do any of that. It's hard to deal with the, like, okay, where do I stand? If these are the messages that I was taught, what does it mean? What does it say about me now? And this is a place where you process through.
That's great. Those are, I'm sure, some impactful conversations. What else do you guys wish people understood about therapy or mental health or any of those?
That's a great question. I think that I would love to have people know that like therapy isn't gender specific or age specific. We serve a variety of individuals, and I think just having that conversation and knowing that there's a safe place for anybody that wants to come to therapy, I think that's been a really strong message that we practice here at Dallas Healing House. So I think that would be my big thing, is like, everybody is welcome to therapy. Yeah, and you know, again, if it's not with me, it can be with someone else, but there is a space for everybody to have their voice heard in therapy.
That's great.
One of the things that I think comes up a lot, especially in a lot of my work with people of color, that is not, therapy is not a thing. This is not something you don't, none of the issues that happen in this house or anything that you have going on leaves this house. And then religion is you know, on top of that, like, you take all these things to God, you know, this is how you process and how you deal with these things. And so for a lot of my clients, even just processing through what it means to be in therapy and to be vulnerable, to be open with somebody who is not a family member, or to be sharing these things with somebody who doesn't live in your house is a big thing. So I think one thing that I would, like, if I could spread the message of, it's okay to need help. It's okay to want to talk to somebody else. Again, somebody who's non-judgmental. Somebody who's going to hold space for you. That doesn't mean you're crazy. It doesn't mean that things are, you know, just out of control. Like we were talking about earlier, like, the world does not have to be ending. For you to be in therapy, just having a safe, soft landing space is helpful for everybody.
Sure. Well, and this is a more objective place where they can bring that conversation, because if you're going to take it to your friend, it's going to be skewed or it's going to be different. So I can see.
Yeah. I think too, I would say that therapy is for everyone. I know that we've had some people that are like, I know you guys see really tough stuff. Like, is this a place for me? And I'm like, yeah, it's a place for everyone. Like, again, everyone can get something out of it. So you don't have to be going through complex trauma or a severe addiction.
Kind of echoing all of y'all, there's no right or wrong way to do therapy. I think that if you're considering therapy, you should just do it. Like, let go of those barriers for long enough to set that appointment, and then deal with it when you get in there. Because there's plenty of time for all of that.
In regards to, sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I was just saying I like
So resources has been a conversation that's come up a lot. The expense of therapy. I know I had a girlfriend that was going to therapy, and she's like, I just can't afford it anymore. And so are there options for that? Is there a place they can go that's maybe less expensive, or what does that look like?
It's such a good question, and I think there's some frustration in the mental health community because we are advocates. We're advocates for our clients, and that can be a barrier. So if somebody wants to use insurance, that's an option.
Do most
for some
insurances
people,
provide?
a lot don't.
Okay.
So and then even if they do, sometimes there's limited options. And when we're talking about that relationship being important and you have limited options, sometimes that can be a barrier. But there are sliding scale places. There are places that will work with like what is the word, salary? Like salary-based or income-based payment options. And then like what we do is we can bill out of network for insurance. And again, that's something that some insurance will do and some won't. But it's another thing that is worth reaching out and asking. Because I don't think we ever get an email and we just say, no, we can't do that. We will help them find a place. If we're not able to meet them where they're at, we'll find a place for them.
And we also have some LPC interns here, which LPC intern just means that you're getting provisional hours towards your licensure. So these are people that have master's degrees in counseling. Intern makes it sound weird. Lots of experience.
My first therapy was with an intern, actually.
And they're great. And our LPC interns have a lot of experience. They're so good. And they have discounted prices because they're not charging as much as a person that has full licensure. So they're charging about $75 and can sometimes do sliding scale with people. So that's always an option too. But most of us come from nonprofit backgrounds. I mean, we all worked with people that were paying $0 for counseling. And so there's also options for that depending on what the issue is that they're dealing with.
I was actually exactly going to point that out, like that idea of if you do have something very specific that you're going through. And because we all come from that background, we do have knowledge of agencies. And so if we do have somebody that comes to us with a very specific experience, and that would, to get to an agency would be their best option and just provide them with a lot of additional resources. That is something that we really work to get to know about our community and share that with clients when they need it.
That's great. So you guys have a lot of community partners, it sounds like.
And I think those experiences that we had in nonprofit we try to bring that into our private practice too. So even though we charge for services now, we still try to do volunteer projects throughout the month. We have like a drive going for DV shelters. Like we still want to contribute to the community in that way because those services are so important. Because there are people that are going through some really tough stuff that can't afford counseling in a private practice.
We really hold the nonprofit world close to our hearts. Like agency work it's one of my favorite parts of working here is that we are all from that world, and so it's like we just connect very easily on why we're in this profession in the first place, and so
there are even other platforms that I think that will connect people who are looking for therapy with people who are taking sliding scale. There are the telehealth. That's becoming more and more popular, and so those may be options and just other resources for people who are looking to get into therapy.
I think I've been seeing a commercial or hearing one about like a text therapist. Like I think the messaging is I work in branding and marketing, so I pay attention to the messaging, but the messaging is centered around you don't have to wait till next week. It can be actually now, things like that. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Because I hadn't really heard of that before until recently, so it was interesting. I think mostly people are just nervous and they don't know who to ask or what to do, and people, there's shame around it already, and so they're like, I'm not going to ask someone else where I should go. You mentioned something that struck a chord, so you were saying like why you guys got into it, so I'd love to hear why you guys did get into therapy.
I don't know, it's a good story.
That's a great question. I think I knew at my core I was always going to end up in something that was helping others. Like I don't think I really understood. Therapy's always been part of my experience, but I was kind of like, I don't know if I never thought I would be that person, but I knew I wanted to do something to help. I actually kind of found it through like just living life, and then I ended up at UNT for grad school, and I was just like, this makes sense to me, like this checks all my boxes. And then I think after agency work, going into private practice more like made this whole that like could be my life, just like solidified it for me, because there's a lot of autonomy in what we do here. So it's like I'm able to tap into what's important to me around helping others, but I also get to have like this it's like creative too, and I'm a kind of creative person, and therapy really is a creative process for the therapist. We've been talking about that this week, of like this in the moment reactions, connecting with another human. It's very organic, very creative, and I think that's another piece of it where it's like I really enjoy that. And so being in this environment, I'm able to tap into all of those things, and then I get to like create the work-life balance that I've always really craved. So I always knew I was never going to end up at a typical desk job. Like that was never going to be my life. So
That's wonderful.
yeah, it's really cool.
I think people don't understand that when they come into therapy, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not a protocol. It's not like we're going to do X, Y, and Z. It's more like personally based. So I like that you said that.
Yeah.
A great point.
Yeah, 'cause everybody's gonna come in with different backgrounds and different issues. People may come in with, like, say, two people come in who both share trauma or some kind of sexual assault. They may present very different for both people, and so we may use some of the same tools, but as far as like how we are relating and how we're building the relationship, it's gonna look different. For sure. Yeah. This story always pops into my head. In undergrad, I had one of my college professors ask us, why did you choose psychology as a degree? And everybody's answer was, we want to help people. And his response was, well, you can help somebody, like helping them take out their trash. And everybody was like, well, no. I was like, I don't want to do that. And so if he were to still ask me again today, I'd still say the same answer. But I think being in the field, it's a deeper level of like, yes, I enjoy helping other people, but I think it's the relationship, it's the being able to connect, and being able to use myself and all of me to be able to help impact somebody else's life, and just spread awareness and information with other people is the thing that I think I love most about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, in undergrad, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I graduated with an English degree, which my parents were really excited about. And I was like, I want a purposeful career. And I landed on therapy. I'd never been to therapy. I was like, this looks cool. And then it ended up being a really good fit. And after, being in the field for a while, I realized I don't want a boss anymore. And it's funny, Rachel and myself and Jessica all went to grad school together. And as grad students, we were like, so wouldn't it be cool if we all worked at private practice together?
This has been a dream for like
yes, for years in the making. And now it's a dream realized.
Yeah.
So,
That's fantastic.
That was like almost a decade ago now.
That's
we were just talking about our interview, and our interview was yeah, Jessica and I were in the same group interview and for grad school, so yeah, it's like she was the first person I actually met in grad school. So
I think mine is kind of similar to Anna's. In high school, I thought I wanted to major in engineering.
Interesting.
So that's I think it was like I was good at math, so that just made sense. But then quickly realized that is not what I wanted to do. And I've always been interested in people and wanted to know what makes people tick. And when I graduated, or when I was getting close to graduating undergrad, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my psych degree, and just kind of landed on counseling, and kind of in the same way, I was like, wow, this is like exactly what I want to do. And I think like as I learned more about the field and learned more about myself, I realized like there are things about ourselves that draw us, you know. Yeah, like I think almost every therapist I know can like really connect to the pain that our clients are feeling. You know, I think that's really important. And that was definitely true for me too.
That's something that I also think is another one of those topics that could be good in therapy. Now that you said that, is I feel like, I don't know if it's social media or if it's technology or what's happening. Part of it, I think, is that communication thing we were talking about earlier. But there's also this like lack of empathy for other people. And I think a lot of people would benefit professionally, personally, in many roles by kind of developing that empathy or maybe tapping into that empathy. I could see that being like extremely powerful in some situations.
And I think that's true for like empathy with others, but also empathy for yourself, or compassion for yourself.
Sure.
I think it can go both ways.
Yeah, that makes sense. What else? How about we hit on you guys? I think we've covered a lot of grounds, actually.
Yeah. That was kind of fun, like going back through how did I get here? I've always defined my life by the chaos theory. I'm like, one thing led to this, and then one day it led to that, and then boom,
Down here.
We do a networking thing with other counselors where each counselor goes and shares their story about how they got where they are, and just a chance for everybody to kind of get to know, like, oh, that's what they went through to get here. And mostly for like new professionals. People have great stories.
Oh, yeah.
And I went and I was like, I don't know what to offer you. Chaos theory.
It's like you know you want to help people, but you're like, I don't know what that means. Because there are lots of different ways to do it, and that's why that's why we love helping helpers, is because like everybody, there are so many professions that can be put under that category, and I do think that oftentimes I think helpers forget that they have to help themselves. Like Jessica was saying with the empathy piece, it's like we have to return that to ourselves. And so I think that's why that's become such a passion, is like, hey guys, don't forget about you. You do really hard stuff. And it's okay to need to talk about that thing, but it's like a lot of us are like, we just got here one day and we want to help people, and but then we
Turns out it's our life passion.
But the fact that we get to like sit here every day and like talk to, like we know each other and we have like history together as friends, and like the fact that we can do all of that here, I think is just such a beautiful piece of being at this practice. So I always love to talk about that when we meet with new people. I'm also like, hey, we're also like friends and we know each other, and like we really care about each other. We care about each other's success, and we support each other a lot, and it's wonderful.
Well, and I'm really big about promoting female-owned businesses and like really cool females that are doing something. I think that's really cool to tell that story. That's my favorite story to tell. So I love that you guys have such a strong female community here, because it can be very hard to manage a bunch of women in a setting. I know from my own experience, I was in college, I was the spa like coordinator for a day spa. And so we had, between the salon and the spa, there's probably total 20 women that are working together. Those dynamics can get very interesting. So I think it's great that you guys have figured out a way to manage that. And I'm sure you guys also, people probably don't think about the fact that therapists probably also need to go to therapy and deal through their issues, because I imagine you guys get burnt out too.
It's definitely part of that self-care piece that we like to talk about it. And I think therapists having open conversations about therapy is actually, again, this empowering message of like, and it's also a humanizing, normalizing conversation. It's like, when we say everybody can benefit from therapy, we truly do. Even the person sitting in this chair right now.
We're not exempt.
No. And I figure we gotta like practice what we preach. So.
Sure. That's good. So has there been anything unique that you guys have learned personally through therapy?
Really good question.
I think my biggest lesson so far in life through therapy was finding my voice. Yeah, I don't know what else I want to say about that, but like connecting to my inner voice and putting it out there and finding value in that is a big part of my work.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think that therapy has helped me be more genuine and open, because it's a place where I could be genuine. I could see my counselor being genuine, and I think that's what I took away.
Self-awareness. I think there's a lot of times where I think a lot of us can just turn into autopilot and just go. But the mindfulness piece of, okay, take a moment, slow down, check in, what's going on. but that increased amount of awareness that comes from.
Yeah. I think like acknowledgement and acceptance of the parts of me that are really human, and just like I can look at a decision, I can bring it to therapy. I have a great working relationship with this person, and so like I can bring genuine experiences, and I get acceptance, but I'm also held accountable when I do want to say I want to make change. So that piece is also good of like that accountability voice follows me home, and so I'm like, be self. And so that's been very helpful.
Yeah.
It's like acceptance, but accountability. So yeah,
That's great. Any other tidbits you guys want to talk about or share? Or anything you feel like you wanted to and we didn't get to? I think we covered a lot.
yeah, that was a satisfying.
And we can start to dive deeper into any one of them, but
Oh, I feel like we could do some breakout conversations.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
Big topics.
I would love to do one specifically on addiction because that's something that I'm really passionate about right now. One of my best friends died from addiction 2 years ago, so it's something that I am, and I think we were counting the other day. We had our 10-year reunion last year for high school, and I went to a massive high school in Oklahoma, so I graduated with like 1,100 people. And I think the number of people that have either died from addiction, are in prison from addiction, or have killed someone else in their addiction or committed some sort of crime during their addiction, the numbers are like outrageous. I was actually very surprised. And then with my mom being a police officer, I hear from her perspective what she sees in the addiction world too, and it's like, oh wow. And there's that whole other piece because she sees a lot of something that was cool about her coming back from Iraq and going back from military to police work. She was able to see when someone was going through PTSD, whereas another cop wouldn't have been able to relate to that person. And she was able to use her tools that she knew to bring that person back, whereas a police officer might have just gotten a very aggressive, combative situation with them because they didn't know what was happening. And then she's also seen the situation where she's seen someone struggling with PTSD and they're struggling with addiction because they don't know how else to handle it. So I think there's a lot of topics there we could go through.
For sure. Yeah.
Jessica's always sharing, we love to talk and have her teach us about some of these things, because it's like part of the process, and it's part of like getting to know these pieces of how people are getting through their experiences. So,
Well,
I think
and
addiction touches everybody's lives somehow.
Right.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was just reading something yesterday. I don't remember if it was a psychology magazine or something psychology based, talking about how they're now saying addiction actually is not as much of a choice. It's more of like kind of a mental disorder or a disease. And so I think that's an important conversation to have because there's a lot of shame and judgment. I know my good friend, his family didn't. When I got up to speak at his funeral, we weren't allowed to speak about the addiction because it was this whole shroud of shame because they're a very well-known family. You know, it just was hard on them. Now she is to a place where she's like, you know what? My son died from addiction, and I'm not going to let this be in vain. And she's like really taking it on, which has been cool to see. Yeah, I know. I do. So, ironically, we were in Florida on vacation. And I see this group coming into the water, and they have some sort of floating flower thing. And so I'm trying to see what's going on, and they all walk out in the water and they cast it out to the ocean. And a lot of them are crying, and I see a bunch of like posters along with sand. And I'm like, so I walk over and I'm like, what's going on? And it was a group of moms who had lost their children of whatever age, adults, teenagers, whatever, to addiction. And so they all come together, and one of them had recently lost their child, and so they helped her kind of in that process of sending his ashes to sea. But it was really cool because they stood, all their pictures were large posters, and they have their faces and their names on them. And they wanted to talk to you about their kids, and not just their addiction, but the good things about their kids, and like their personalities and what they were like. And ironically, I had called my friend's mom that day. I was like, there's this group, it's a national group, you need to meet them, like get plugged in. She was like, oh, I just joined them. And I was like, oh. So it's a really cool synchronicity moment.
How meaningful.
Yeah, it was great.
That's the other part I think about therapy, that information. The information that is gained, and a lot of times you don't even have to come to us to get it, but just talking about like addiction and the facts, and not what what's put out there, but actually learning like what does this mean? How does this affect the brain?
Right.
Like how does this really like scientifically impact your body? I think for so many families and people, it's already hard enough to deal with, and just everybody deals with it in the way that they know how, but I think having more information, just having more insight about what's actually going on can be so helpful in situations.
I agree. I had a lot of friends that lived in very small towns in Oklahoma, and I've seen a lot of comments come out of them that say things like, if you're depressed or if you have an addiction, you're not praying enough, or you're not reading your Bible enough, or things like that. And I'm like, this seems really harmful.
Yeah, that's what the research says.
I feel like that's not helping the person I'm trying to talk to. So maybe we need some education there. I'm like, please don't say that. So yes, education, awareness.
Yes.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you guys for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was great. I'm excited.